Hey everybody, I'm Scott Harkey. I have with me Hisham Salama. And Hisham, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
I am Hisham Salama. I am new to USAA and heading up Bank Digital and Transformation. I have recently relocated to Charlotte, so the downtown area has changed quite a bit in the last 8 years, but it's good to be home.
Cool. Thank you for being here. So today we're going to talk about creating a culture of innovation. So I've known Hisham for a long time. I've always enjoyed seeing how he engages in the various companies he's worked at over the years. He's been at a number of banks the last 10, 15 years. And always does a really great job of engaging his team. I almost, this is the great ideas I have that I don't execute on, almost brought a bunch of slides showing the LinkedIn pictures of what he and his team have done over the years, because it's always fun to see. But
I thought you were going to say the LinkedIn pictures, my profile pictures.
Well,
I used to wear a suit and tie to work. And
try to keep that part out of it and just make it about what you do for the people. But all right, so let's start out by talking about, let's define what does a culture of innovation mean to you, right? I'm going to give you lots of props and say you've done these, managed to create that, but to kind of set the bar, what does that even mean? How do you view kind of creating a culture of innovation?
Yeah, I think the start, it's very difficult in banking to have this. It's one, having belief across the ecosystem, that things can be done different, there are different ways to do things, and at the end of the day, what product you're delivering can be done. And I think a lot of that gets stymied for a number of reasons, that maybe the business doesn't know how to communicate with technology, the business doesn't know how to communicate with digital or marketing. We sort of get where we want to go, but we don't know how to negotiate or work through it. And having that belief, to me, is one of the core principles. Another one would be just will and willpower, right? Often I talk to my team about having a very, very high pain tolerance, that you're going to run into brick walls left and right, but you're defined with how you get up and how you work through things. And just, over the years, having run into a multitude of issues, one of the things I pride myself in, pride my team in, is just, hey, we're not going to give up here. We've got belief. We know we're doing the right thing. And I really think that fosters that culture of innovation.
My eyes are over here. Over here.
Okay.
So it's about attitude. It's about setting the tone the right way. Is there something about innovation that warrants or that pushes for more of that need for perseverance?
I think at the end of the day, we're driving towards business results. It is the one thing. So, making sure that you understand how to leverage innovation to achieve that. And I think that gets lost because just over the years, innovation was there for the sake of innovation. And then now tying that back to a business result or a business enabler is the key. And, having the business believe that, technology or a different way of doing things can help achieve that goal.
Okay, that was way more awkward, so please continue to look out there at them.
Hey, I don't know where to look. I'll just look at the camera.
All right, so is this a new thing? Is the idea of needing to create these cultures and foster this way of working together, is that something new that we've seen emerge due to COVID and everybody being virtual? Has it always been there? How do you think about that?
I don't think it's new. I think that part of it is coming to light because the organizations are expecting different things. So that's one part of it. But again, I think a lot of this falls on leadership with what they truly want to do. And there are different schools of thought here on how much a leader wants to truly disrupt. And there's a quote I love: "If it's not difficult, it's not disruptive." And so disruptive can be a bad word in banking. And what I'm not saying is going outside of risk parameters and just doing whatever you want. But what I am saying is advocating for change. And that's typically a good thing, when you're coming in from the outside or just trying to do things differently. But a lot of it, again, falls on leadership and falls on that drive.
How do you foster that within the organization? You mentioned well, you didn't say it directly, but when people come newly into an organization, there's often the opportunity to see things kind of from a different lens than maybe it's thought of before. But how do you foster it within people that are there and have been part of it? How do you get them to see past that, well, no, this is just the way it is, and get them to think about it differently or solving it differently?
I think the biggest function is time and trust. And you have to be willing to invest in relationships. And I think a lot of people want to skip that step and say, I'm new to an organization, here's how we do it, or here's how I read about it in whatever article. But to bring people along with you takes a lot of time. And if people are not willing to invest, again, this sounds very elementary, but investing in those coffee chats, investing in showing, what they're going to get out of it for their business, it's not going to work, right? You'll come in and, end up breaking what's either in flight or, end up just rubbing people the wrong way. But the relationship building is so important early on in order to gain that trust and support down the road.
One of the things that, I was thinking about this conversation and putting myself in the audience and saying, like, it's easy to hear somebody talk about these things and they seem kind of, like you said, they seem kind of obvious, or they seem kind of like, of course you would do stuff like that. But I think so rarely is it actually done, right? And I think so rarely have I seen organizations or people, frankly, that continue to build those environments no matter where they go. I joked about the LinkedIn thing, but it's a true thing. If you were to look up Hisham on LinkedIn, you'd see from time to time at various organizations he's been at, team events or things that they post and just silliness. Maybe share some of the different ideas or things you've done to really engage the team.
So there's a couple things. Like I'd say, as a new leader at USAA, one of the first things I told my direct reports and all of my employees at our first all team meeting was, the last thing I want to do is talk about work when I'm getting to know people. It's literally the last thing. It's the least interesting thing about me. It's probably the least interesting thing about you. Like, let's actually take time to get to know each other. And not only does that normally catch people off guard, because when a new boss comes in, all they want to do is talk about work. Where are we? Where's the money going? And part of what I try to instill in my team is that there's work and then there's fun, and they can be exclusive together. You can have fun at work. And a lot of people don't know how to press those buttons. And so, I do spend a lot of time thinking, what can we do from a team building perspective? The simple things, great, have a pizza party, awesome, right? People like pizza, food brings people together. But when we started really thinking outside of the box, I work out 5 days a week. When I was in San Francisco at Bank of the West, we would do monthly classes at Barry's, which is a high-intensity impact workout where we would rent out the entire studio for any bank employee. So it's not just my team. It's, hey, we want to extend it to business partners. Even if you're not a business partner, we want to see you there. And really, showcasing that, working out is probably not the best example because a lot of people are intimidated by that, but showing that regardless of where you are in a fitness journey, you can come out, be part of the team. Other things, we had to get very creative during COVID. So we did a lot of things. There were times when we would schedule 2-hour blocks of time and I would give a movie review, like why a movie was important to me. Other team members would do the same, album reviews. But my most favorite during COVID was we did bring your favorite can to lunch, and we ate out of cans. And so it was, people got very, very creative and very, very competitive because people were bringing Pringles cans. Clearly soup was a big one, but that really, in light of everything going on in the world, really just took the temperature down. Most recently, one of my employees at the all-team meeting, I don't know where this idea came from, he's a big Pearl Jam fan, said, hey, we should do a Pearl Jam day. And I was like, sure, go ahead and schedule it. And the team put together one of the most interactive 90 minutes I've ever seen. And it sort of started with Pearl Jam, but ended with a whole plethora of music, and it was interactive trivia, us sharing favorite concert moments. But again, it really did bring the team together because the Slack chat was blowing up throughout the event. And to see the engagement, I think we had 87 employees at the peak on that out of my team, which was roughly a little over half the team joined, which was awesome.
That is awesome. So I have 3 questions.
Yes.
Could you put something in a can, or did it have to be naturally from a can?
I'm pretty sure people just ate out of the cans. I ate a can of black beans. That was my thing.
Can I put tacos in a Pringle can and I'm okay?
You could have made a Pringle burrito. I think that would have been acceptable. That's innovation right there. That's a culture of innovation.
Second question, what was the movie you did a review on?
Shawshank Redemption. Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah.
All right. Third was, did you do an album review, you said?
I did.
What album did you pick?
So I did Bon Iver Self-Titled, which is his second full-length album. And it's my most listened to album, not that anybody cares, but since, there's 10 of us here, I've listened to, I think, over 1,200 times in the 10 years it's been out.
Did you count every time? 12?
Well,
Seems like a very precise number.
They keep a counter, and it's a comfort album, so.
That's awesome. So I think one of the things that I was thinking was, is this easier to do in a smaller team or organization, or is it really irrelevant? Like, obviously there are some kind of events and things that have size constraints, but how do you think about it in terms of the size of the organization or the team, or how do you do it most effectively?
Yeah, so I don't think the organization size matters. I think when you're getting noticed, because clearly your peers in other areas start talking about, hey, look what's happening over here. At Bank of the West, it was just a pretty big impact out of the gate with what we were able to do. At TD, it was a little tougher. There's Canada, there's the US, but at USAA, we're just being extremely intentional on inviting everybody to all the events. And there's a lot of tools that are there that make that part easy. So it's really just around empowering the team to say, hey, you've got an idea for Pearl Jam Day, great. You don't need permission to do this, just go schedule the event. And that really gets the team talking. And again, you just hope that spills over to how the teams are working together, right? So they've done one thing together. The hope and the intent is, can they carry that over to actually business-related work?
Yeah, that's what I was going to carry us back to is while these things are good for building culture and fun to think about, like fundamentally the goal is to drive good working relationships where the teams work together more cohesively. How have you done that in the virtual kind of post-COVID world? How have you, beyond the events and things like that, how have you either instilled the right behaviors or set the right cadences, or how have you continued to build the culture of collaborativeness and engagement from an employee standpoint when everybody's virtual?
So outside of events, I think for me, and this is where I get coached on this by every mentor, every boss, every development session I have, is you have no work-life balance. Got it. Understood. I've been told that for 15 years. But what I've done the last 2 years when we haven't been in the office is I was there side by side with the team. PPP is probably the greatest example I could give. It's when the team was on at midnight, 3 a.m. deploying, I didn't have to be there. I chose to be there, right? To encourage the rest of the team that, hey, just because we're not together in the office, like the leadership team is still here. They haven't forgotten about us doing the work. And that carried through during the 2 years, Scott, throughout COVID, that I just did not want to let the team feel like they were alone, because it was a rough time for everybody in 2020. And a lot of people in San Francisco, where my team was based at the time, they're in very small one-bedroom apartments or studios, and everybody was feeling isolated. So the least I could do as a leader, and the least leaders could do, was be there virtually every time the opportunity presented itself.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I certainly feel like it has an impact and people feel it, right?
Yeah.
They still feel connected. Do you think we ever go back to teams in an office with regularity? I would not even going to say all the time, because that'd just be silly. I know we're never going back to teams in the office all the time. But do you think regular engagement in an office as a leader, do you still build kind of around that assumption that one day it'll be like that? Or is it we just accepted that it's always going to be this blend of virtual and person, and that's the environment we have to figure out how to support?
I go back and forth on this. I really do. Early on in the pandemic, it was, I'm never coming back to the office, right? You don't need to. We've proven we could work. I think as we've come down the continuum, what I've noticed is leadership really needs to be in the office. And again, that's a different bar depending on what your organization considers what leadership is. But I do feel I need to be in the office. So we've got an office in South End. I'm there 3 or 4 days a week, even though my team is dispersed. And so I'm giving them the flexibility. I think it's okay, but from a leadership perspective, there are different GMs or business heads that I do need to interact with, and that face-to-face time really, really matters. And not because I'm new. It's just how I feel will be the most effective to drive results. I still believe there's probably a larger population of employees that never need to come back to the office. And I think banking, because we've seen all the headlines of CEOs coming out saying, hey, we're demanding the team come back in. I think that's going to be really have an inverse reaction from a talent perspective. Again, it's way different. It's more of like the Elon approach of, okay, he was a little brash when he said it, but if you're an executive, you need to be in the office. Got it, understood. But if you're, just an individual contributor, I think there are far more many cases where it's acceptable to live where you want and to have a comfortable and happy life.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've done a very similar thing in that I go into the office all the time. I'm often there by myself, like there's no one else there, but I still go because I feel like if people would come in, there's a lot more opportunity to create connection.
Yeah.
And so if I want that of people, then I'm going to go in and be there. And we don't push it on other employees. We don't say people have to go in, but it's just kind of that.
So that's the balance that I don't know what organizations or companies have got it right, but how do you create the FOMO in the office?
Yeah.
Right, and so that's tough, like especially with where the economy could be headed. Do you spend a ton of money on events to bring employees back? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, the tricky part is trying to. You can't not support the virtual, right?
Yeah.
So you have to create an experience that supports both, which then means you kind of detract from both, right? Our experience has been, if you do a hybrid event, it's not as good as an in-person would be for the in-person people, and it's not as good as a pure virtual one would be for the virtual people. So you kind of discount both sides of it.
And there's only so many of those like cocktail kits I can get in the mail, because like that if another don't send those.
My kids just take them and sell them from a stand on the end of the
Very
street.
nice,
Yeah.
very nice.
Part of the underlying thought behind some of the things we're doing is all about human connection, and we've mentioned it a couple times. But when I think about what it takes to build a culture of innovation and really encourage, in the very beginning of the conversation, you were talking about people being willing to fail and having resilience and being able to have a toughness to things, right? Let's talk a little bit about that. When you think about the key traits in an individual or in a company's culture that really enable companies to do great things, right? So step outside of banking, step outside of your specific team, just in general. What are attributes you've seen in other organizations or in people that you feel like are good embodiments of some of those key?
At the simplest point, a high EQ. Like that is one of the things I look for. I think there are so many smart people in the world, but a high EQ will clearly, like in the playbook I like to run, will carry you extremely far. And then having just the desire and willpower to win. It comes down to that. And I mean, when I'm interviewing people, I'm trying to ask questions to figure out, because in an interview, I mean, it's one of the hardest things we have to do as leaders is hire talent. You're 50-50 at best, and if anybody tells you they figured it out, they're lying. And trying to pull out, like, is this person going to come in, not break everything, and also, understand when the going gets tough? Are they going to be there the next day? And I've hired employees where that hasn't panned out. I've had a lot of people surprise me. And again, by empowering them, giving them flexibility, have been the greatest things I've done. And it's, a commitment I make to every team. I will not micromanage. Not my style. Here's space. And again, when you need help, I will be there.
How does that change with more junior employees, right? Especially remote junior employees.
Yeah. So I think this is where leaders, and again, if you're asking me, my junior employees are a couple levels down, but leaving my calendar open for coaching. So I look back, honestly, at the days when we were both at Bank of America and having some of the mentors I had, they really molded me. And that time that I got from those handful of people, I was talking about this the other day, it's like I took a debt out. With all the hours of conversation and answers that I was just lucky to get at that point in time. And my calendar's always open, and we owe it to those junior employees to coach them. But they also have to want to be coached. Like that's the other piece. There are a lot of people who come in and may realize, hey, this company's not for me. I'm an intern, see you at the end of 8 weeks, okay. Or you may hire a junior employee, but again, just to try to pull that thread with them and give them the tools they need, and again, to just show them you're being a human about everything.
One of the concerns or one of the thoughts is around hiring post-COVID is that jobs have become more transactional in general, right? That people don't build as much of a connection to the company and the culture, and so it ends up being who's going to pay me the most money, or what's kind of the best thing to put on my resume to get me to the next spot. How do you view that and how it's changed or not changed your approach?
I think it's been accurate the last 12 to 18 months. I think that's I had a number of employees leave for, I don't know if it was the right opportunity for them, but it was clearly a financial opportunity or a very cool company to put on their resume. I think that's getting ready to change. We're in a bit of a correction right now, but ultimately, and I stand by this, is I want to support every employee with what they want to do. Everyone's got a family, everyone's got more or less like a spouse or just people that they're trying to live their best life. I just don't want to crowd their decision because it's a tough process when you're going to go to a different company. But just be supportive is the best advice.
And how do you attract the right talent, right? So as an organization, I won't make any comments about your current organization, but I'll just say in general, banks have a certain viewpoint as an employer type. We're in Charlotte, so lots of people here work for banks. But if you compare it to brand new fintech that's all sexy and all these things people want to talk about, or a big tech company that's got it's got a different persona to it as an entity, right?
Yeah.
You've worked in financial services organizations most of your career. Like, how do you get people to get excited about going to work for a bank?
Yeah, so Scott's right. So all I've worked in is banks. So this is this is an honest answer. I think one of the things I look for in hiring, if I'm hiring someone new, meaning we know we have a need internally, we can't find the right candidate because always on my teams we want to promote within. And so if we have to go external, I'm typically not going to hire from a bank. If you look at the track record of the last 50 employees that have been on my team that have been external hires, I would say less than 20% of those have come from a traditional FI. And so we've almost, created a story around what culture we have, because a lot of times recruiters, get the shutout when they're calling someone prospective and saying, hey, we're at a bank. And you have to spend an enormous amount of time building what that story is. And then you have to have the prospective employee believe when they're coming in the door, this is not a crusty bank. And that is very, very hard because, again, the perception and the reputation of banks in general, when you're talking to product owners, in tech companies or fintech, it's typically not a positive reputation. And so we have to correct that. But one of the things, and again, this is all public information, we know what's happening in the tech sector right now. There's almost this plethora of information out there on layoffs.fyi of companies that are going through layoffs right now. And so looking at those companies and understanding what are our needs for our company, right? It's typically product, it could be engineers, but starting there is a great place to bring in some external perspective. And working with your tech partners is super key with what type of engineering talent do you want to bring in? What are we trying to build? And getting that cohesive story stitched together with the whole company.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but my perception would be is often less talking about the bank and more talking about what you're doing at the bank, right? It's like, here's what we're trying to transform,
100%.
here's what we're trying to drive.
But, when we were going through this transformation at Bank of the West, it was bringing people on site so they could see where we're working, how we're working, selling the vision of what we're trying to do. And a lot of times, I get asked a question, they're like, well, who do you want to be, right? What bank do you look up to, or, where would you want your mobile app? And the last comparison I want, again, no offense to anybody in banking, is to be compared to another banking app. it's literally the last comparison I would want. So in order to do that, I know at some point I'm going to need to bring an outside perspective.
Sorry, I was going to make a joke about all bank apps suck, but then I thought that might not be real kind since you work.
That's not very.
So one of the things that I think would be helpful to, as we kind of work towards closing this out, we'll see what questions you guys have here in a minute, is in thinking about it from the context of advice to give to other people, right? Others in your position, others at other organization. When you think of we talked about a lot of the individual pieces, but if it's, wow, I was really inspired by that conversation. I'm going to go back to my organization. I'm really going to try to drive some change in the way we look at hiring, or we're going to try some of these activities. What is the advice you would give somebody to?
To me, the starting point is getting calibrated with your organization on, do you know what great looks like collectively as a whole? Because I think that definition is a moving target. And it took us, at any organization I've been at, it takes a long time to understand, to get everybody from a digital or tech perspective, this is great over here.
And you mean from like a cultural perspective of like?
I mean from almost any perspective,
okay.
From a digital product perspective, from a cultural perspective, because people have different perceptions on, what is right. And spending time with them and getting aligned there is where I would start. The second part about hiring, the next hire anybody makes, the one question when you're bringing it back to the internal panel to do calibration or voting or however you guys do it, is asking yourself a simple question of, do we think the person we're talking about bringing into our company could hire the next set of leaders we actually need? And it is key. And I'm not talking about hiring an individual contributor, because you'd be at that all day. I'm talking about a leader. Do you think they have the ability to hire other folks you would need to change the organization?
And attract them, right?
That's what I mean.
The kind of person that are going to draw?
That's exactly what I mean. And so I think we miss that step so many times in going through some of these panels and just say, hey, we need someone to do ABC function. They've done that in like a past organization. We're just going to bring this person in. Like, that's the easy way out. And so again, if it's not difficult, it's not disruptive, like take the extra time to say, do we think they're going to bring in the next set of leaders?
Yeah, are they going to be a catalyst for driving the type of culture and the type of people you want in the company
exactly.
in the first place?
Yeah.
All right, I'll pause for a second and see if there's any questions. And if nobody raises their hand,
not
we're
all
going to go
once,
one
please.
by one.
Yeah.
Is there anyone with a
There's
microphone?
one, yeah. 2, 3. I wish we had prizes to give away. So there's two pieces here. There's the employee satisfaction metric, which is easy. How do the employees feel? Do they feel that they're being listened to? Do they feel that they're getting what they need out of this? And not from a work perspective. This is truly from like, what is my employee experience? Like, how do we make the workplace, whether virtual or physical, the best place to be? So there's typically companies have employee satisfaction. We do it quite often at USAA. It's a very, very vocal employee base, which I love. At previous organizations, it's been once, maybe twice a year, you get that like true feedback where you're pushing that to employees. And from a KPI perspective, again, it depends. Like from an actual business perspective, I think that's just different dependent on what business you're in. But again, one of the things I can say, having gone through a couple of these transformations, is there's absolutely a correlation. When you get that flywheel going from employee experience, you're going to see the business results. Like the teams are going to want to work together, but again, it's allowing people to bring their authentic self to work, being a very, very human leader, like, just working with the team and being there. It's those little things just go miles with employees.
I imagine there's also signals of things, attrition and other things that are very direct measurements of like, are people sticking around? How many applicants are you getting for roles? Like, what is the caliber applicant you're getting? Like,
yeah.
They're all good kind of signals, right? Of are you doing some of the right things to attract and retain the right people?
Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah.
So I would blame my mom for all of this. So I think it was.
Thank your mom, you mean?
Yeah,
not
that's
blame your
right.
mom.
Thank my
Yeah.
mom. Yeah, she might actually watch this. So, in all seriousness, like, here's the story. 92, I think, Guns N' Roses came to Chapel Hill, where I grew up. My parents were like, you're absolutely not going. Like, this is not happening. They ended up breaking up, 12 months later, and I was devastated. And so from that point forward, my parents, when it came to the arts, and this is truly what got me to see, what the world looks like, it was whatever concert you want to go to, whatever film you want to see, like, it was just wide open. And that it's not going to work for every child, but for me, that was, how I got to where I am. It was almost this like unfederated access to VisArt Video and Blockbuster and Cat's Cradle at the time. If you're from Chapel Hill, that was the music venue. And I think that just made me see the world differently and say, there are so many different ways to do things. What tools do I use? Twitter. That's it. I'm on Twitter way too often. There's a lot of information out there. I try to consume everything I can from business and tech Twitter. So if you're interested, the 4 topics I follow: business, tech, music, poker. Those are the 4.
What was the last one?
Poker.
Okay, I thought you said yogurt. I was like,
Yeah,
that's
yogurt.
a
Yes,
really
yogurt.
strange
Yeah.
thing to follow.
Yeah, yogurt.
Another question here.
Yeah. Yeah, so let me just use different terms. So on my team, we've got junior product owners. I'm absolutely talking with them along with the business. I am not speaking yet to our engineering team who are sitting there in their pod, but I do spend an enormous amount of time with the working team, again, without micromanaging. So there's a huge difference of showing up to a design critique and seeing, what our customers, or in USAA's case, what our members might see, and participating and giving feedback versus micromanaging on, hey, when is this going to be done? And I think that's where the trust comes in with the teams on what they're delivering and how they're prioritizing. But with me, I don't know if I'll ever be able to give that part of, how I grew up in digital banking, because I love that stuff. Ultimately, and Scott's got a good point. There's just a world of opportunity when it comes to banking apps on how do we ship the best products possible.
Yeah, this is one of the things that's become really hard in a post-COVID world to me. It used to be that regardless of what level you were in an organization, you could walk around an office and engage with employees from all over the company at all different levels, and there was nothing weird about it, right? Like, you could make it a very casual thing. But now that every meeting is a scheduled virtual meeting, you schedule a meeting with a junior employee and it's like, wait, what did I do wrong? Or what do I need to prepare? And it's like, no, it's cool. I'm just checking in, seeing how things are going. And it can often cause more tension and more frustration for that employee than what you get out of it, right? Or ultimately the benefit you're trying to provide. So that's one that I've definitely struggled with, of how to replicate that in the virtual world where everything's so scheduled and structured. Any other questions? I've got a rapid fire round. Dean? Yeah, I mean, this was the whole point of Pearl Jam Day, because my leadership team asked me the question, what's the intent here? Why are we doing this? And my snap response was, Because it's Pearl Jam.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's definitely Pearl Jam. But like to be seen, to get noticed, and to create a conversation amongst our business partners that, wow, like look at what they're doing. And then again, the whole tie-in here is, again, I'm 7 weeks into this role, but if you look down 3 months from now is, are we producing, even incrementally, just better work, right? Are we becoming more active? Are we becoming more vocal? Are we giving the business the support they need? Like those are the measuring sticks I'd use. And so I think that part's important, but again, creating the culture of innovation typically is not going to start immediately with work. It's, at least in the playbook I'm running, it's, hey, what can we do to get seen where people want to gravitate towards us, right? And so again, time will tell. It's, the playbook has worked before, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's one thing I'll close out with is you've mentioned it several times now, and just to reemphasize the point, Hish has a playbook, right? It's all very intentional. He's done it in multiple cultures, and the point is the intent, right? And that it carries through and continues to be part of the plan from the days in the organization. I think that's a big part of why you've been successful in driving some of these things. I was going to close it out, but Cora, I see you have a question. I'm going to let you go for it.
And specifically with what? Yeah, so I think it's tough, right? So I think it depends who your partner is. Let me say this, and without using any names, there are certain partners in the space that I think internally people could do better. There are very niche applications that no one should be building, you should be buying. So I think it's just a matter of, and again, it goes back to belief. There is a lot of, when you talk about, insourcing some of this, there's always this like, oh my God, can we do it? And I think that's where this like true partnership model between technology, the business, everyone sort of has to come to life and figure it out, like if you can truly do it. And so, but again, going back to like the very, very niche things, like, yeah, like you want to be partnering and buying those things, but there are core things tactically like you do want to bring in-house from my perspective.
All right, rapid fire closeout.
Oh man.
Top 3 albums of all time.
Of all time?
Of all time.
Beatles, Sgt. Pepper. This is tough, man. This is really, really tough. Jeez, man. I mean, I guess Bon Iver, even though that's not a top 10 album of all time for mine, it's most listened to. And then, oh man, you were really throwing me for a loop here. I don't know. We'll leave the third one empty.
TBD. All right. Top 3 concerts
that I've seen.
Yep.
Fish, 2009, Hampton, when they came back from a 4.5-year hiatus.
All right, we're done. You lost me there. It's over with Fish.
You just asked me. Okay, fine, whatever. All right, next.
Thank you very much, Hish.
He actually ended it on that.
I can't move past Hish, or I can't move past Fish. We're just on
done.
that.
Okay, we're done.
Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate the conversation, the open and honesty. Thank you, everybody. Yeah.